In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
Some people think eating low-carb, moderate protein, high-fat is just too hard to try to figure out. But it's really quite simple when you break it down into getting these three things on your plate: protein, vegetables, fat. Simply choose fatty protein sources like eggs, beef, or pork. Add in green leafy and non-starchy vegetables like spinach, broccoli, or asparagus. And then use enough fat to feel satiated from butter and dairy, coconut foods, and avocado. Eat real whole foods as much as possible, and you really can't go wrong on keto. Keto is easy. Don't make it more difficult than it needs to be.
Simplified short-form keto videos found exclusively at ketowhiteboard.info. Watch it, share it, live it.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another YouTube Live. I'm live here on YouTube. I'm live over here on Instagram. And so what we do here is a show called Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and it's a pretty cool show. We go live a couple times a day. Generally on Instagram, 10 to in the morning times on most days. And then I've been rotating it around YouTube Live, Facebook Live. I'm literally at Living a Low Carb Man wherever you are online. So you can go to Instagram. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, Facebook, youtube.com/Living Low Carb Man, and then YouTube, Facebook.com/Living Low Carb Man, then YouTube.com/Living Low Carb Man. So LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live just like you're doing right now if you're watching me and interacting in real time. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay. On Instagram, it's generally up for 24 hours and then it disappears. But here on YouTube, you guys get to have it forever and ever, amen. So definitely watch the replay if you miss any of the lives. Finally, we do have the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. Today's Jimmy Rants is about something that just happened when I was at Walgreens. And so I went to Walgreens, and you can see on the wall behind me, I have all these little canvas prints of all of my podcasts. There's the Living La Vida Low Carb Show and Keto Talk. My old shows, Fasting Talk, and one more thing. I had one made, you guys, for Jimmy Rants. So how cool is that? I have a Jimmy Rants canvas. So I want to hang this up somewhere behind me. So when I do these Jimmy Rants, you see my screaming face. Pretty cool, huh? So when I went to pick it up, the lady looked at me and she's like, I didn't know I knew somebody famous. I said, what are you talking about? She said, I was listening to this guy, he's what, Fit to Fat to something. And I said, oh, Fit to Fat to Fit, that's Drew Manning. Yeah, I was listening to his podcast the other day and he said your name and I saw your picture and I'm like, I know that guy, he comes into Walgreens. You know anything about keto? And I was like, yeah, I know a little bit about keto. So we had a nice little conversation about keto. She said she's not real sure if it's something she wants to get into. And so I started asking her the typical questions I would ask anybody that kind of runs into this. And she's like, well, I just don't want to go full bore keto. I keep my carbs low. And I was like, well, what does that mean? She said, well, I try to keep them to 40 grams a day. I'm like, if you're going 40 grams, you're pretty close to keto at this point. Well, I just didn't want to go to the extreme of like eating bacon or anything like that. And I said, well, what's wrong with bacon? Oh, it's the fat in it. I said, so when you reduce carbs in your diet, you have to replace those carbs with another macronutrient. And unfortunately, you can only handle just so much protein. So what's the other macronutrient that you think you have to increase? And she's like, well, it's fat, but that can't be good. So I went on to explain a little bit more about how there's no concerns about heart health issues, because that was something she was expressing. I asked her, how's your hunger levels? Oh, I'm starving all the time. I said, that's the fat. That's where the fat comes into play. And she said something along the lines of, well, Drew keeps talking about this like intermittent fasting, and I don't know if I could starve myself doing something like that. And again, I explained to her that's where the fat can come into play to help you naturally fall into a pattern of intermittent fasting. So guys, what I want to talk about here today, she brings up a really interesting topic of discussion that I wanted to bring to you guys today is, don't think you need keto, because that's what she was telling me. I don't think I need keto because I'm doing okay. And she's lost weight, so she just had a baby, and so she's losing the baby weight. And so she's lost about 26 pounds of the baby weight so far, which is really good. Doing what she's doing, keeping the carbs low, around 40 grams, minimizing her fat, unfortunately, and very likely minimizing her calories, which would produce weight loss. But at some point, her will is not going to last very long. So she doesn't think she needs keto. And I looked her point blank in the face and I said, you're still addicted to sugar. You're still addicted to carbohydrates. And this addiction, you guys, is very real. So it got really interesting when I got into the midst of talking to her, and she said, well, I just don't want to go through life without having the freedom to be able to eat whatever I want. And if I eat keto, that takes that freedom away. I said, well, what is it that you think you want that you can never live without? She said, well, I don't want to give up my Reese's peanut butter cups. I said, addiction. Addiction. That's what that means. And there's people out there in the world of nutrition who say, well, there is no such thing as sugar addiction. You can't possibly get addicted to food. It's not the same way, even though we know from several studies that the same kind of pathway in the brain that makes you addicted to alcohol, makes you addicted to drugs, is the exact same pathway that is impacted by sugar and carbohydrates. And so for her, she felt like, oh, I can't live without, so therefore I don't think I could do keto. To which I then explained, well, you know, if you go full bore keto, then some of that addiction will go away. That some of that desire will go away. It may take a period of adaptation. I said, but unfortunately, the way you're doing things now, you've got to choose whether you want to be full bore keto and try to get all the benefits that come from keto, which means you give up the Reese's peanut butter cups for a period of time, or you choose to continue to be very low carb, but not keto, and you're stuck in this in-between of sugar burner and fat burner. Guys, I don't know about you, if you've been in that situation where you're eating just enough carbs and just enough to be low carb, but not ketogenic, and how horrible you feel. That's not by accident. You want to make the preponderance of what you eat and what you burn for fuel to be fat. And then the byproduct of that fat burning being ketones. And so she wanted to basically have her cake and eat it too. And what I'm talking about here today, if you're just joining us, I was just at Walgreens, had this beautiful canvas print made of my Jimmy Rants logo in that beautiful Instagram. And there's YouTube. And she is keto curious, but her biggest concern is she feels like she won't have the flexibility to be able to eat whatever she wants. And when I inquired further about what that meant, she said, oh, I want to have Reese's peanut butter cups every once in a while. And I said, well, as long as every once in a while doesn't end up being every day or every other day, that's probably relatively okay. Then she revealed a little more information. She said, well, I have gestational diabetes during my pregnancy. I said, okay, that changes things a little bit. That's a clear sign of insulin resistance when you develop gestational diabetes in vitro. And it also means that you have a very high risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Not inevitable, but pretty darn high risk if you developed gestational diabetes. So I said, that means you need keto probably more than most people. And you need to give up on the Reese's peanut butter cups sooner than later if you want to get this under control. And she's probably in her low 30s, upper 20s, low 30s as far as age goes. And so she had this whole notion that she would be starving herself if she intermittent fasted. She would be missing out on things if she ate keto. It did seem to me that every time there was some reason why she should go keto, she should fast, she'd put up some kind of a wall. And to me, you guys, I see this a lot with a lot of people. As soon as they bring up like objections like, well, I don't think I could live without, and then insert some crappy garbage, or I feel like I'll be starving myself if I fast, those are telltale signs to me of someone who's still pretty darn sugar carb addicted. It's a clear sign that that addiction is very real in this case, her life. And it means that those are the people that probably need keto more than not. And so, you know those people in your life, oh, I could never live without bread. I could never give up my candy, my ice cream. I've got to have my, in this case, Reese's peanut butter cups. I don't want to have that flexibility of not being able to have that in my diet because I can fit it within my calories. We all know people like that. We all know people that try to justify their choices that are probably less than ideal. So again, if you're just joining us, I'm on YouTube Live here, Instagram Live here with Jimmy Rants, and we're talking about this topic of these people that think they don't need keto. And I always inquire further, and it generally comes down to they still have an addiction to some kind of a sugar or some kind of a carbohydrate-based food. And I was just talking to this nice lady. I've known her for many years at the local Walgreens. And I was picking up my canvas print for Jimmy Rants, which she did a great job. She even did the little thing on the back. Sometimes they just throw the kit in there and they don't always, like some of these behind me that I have hanging up. I had to put that on there, but she recognized my face. She recognized me. She heard me on the Drew Manning Fit to Fat to Fit radio show. And she's like, oh, I met a celebrity. I said, no, you just met Jimmy Moore. But she was kind of asking questions, and she's keto curious right now. So what I did for her today, I said, can I help you out today to better understand this and what I'm talking about? Because I knew she needed to get back to work. I said, can I gift you a copy of my latest book called Real Food Keto? So in Real Food Keto, realfoodketo.com, by the way, if you're interested in it, we outline how to do keto, but more than that, we get into some of the other aspects of why you eat keto and the digestion and detoxification, the importance of getting healthy fats, which she did know. When I said, you know, you need to probably up the amount of fat that you're consuming, especially the saturated fat, she's like, oh, well, that's what I'm worried about. It's gonna clog my arteries. So she's okay with eating Reese's peanut butter cups, but she's not okay with eating bacon or other sources of saturated fat. A little bit of an imbalance of understanding, but it's pretty typical, you guys. I'm seeing this more and more. That's the thing that hang people up. They don't think they can give up the carb-based foods, and they think that healthy foods like saturated fats is gonna cause harm to them. So digestion, detoxification, vitamins and minerals, all of those things discussed in our book, Real Food Keto. So hopefully she reads it. I handed it to her and she's like, dang, that's a heavy, big book. I said, well, there's a lot of recipes in the back if you wanna start cooking this way as well. So fingers crossed, you guys, that we help to educate someone today who probably needs keto more than even she realizes. Because at this point, she is post-baby. So she just had a baby. She's losing the baby weight. She's doing things to try to make that happen. She's probably lost most of her weight because of calorie restriction, which you can lose weight with calorie restriction. Nobody's denying that. But she's probably not being nourished, and the fact that she's still hungry, the fact that she still has cravings for sugary, carby foods, some of the insulin resistance that reared its ugly head when she had gestational diabetes is still impacting her now. So the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants is the people that say they don't need keto, it's usually code for I'm still heavily addicted to sugar, heavily addicted to carbohydrates, and I don't think I'm ready to give up those things yet. Of course, most of us that eat keto and have done this for a while, you know that strong feeling, the strong cravings for those things that you thought you could never live without. For me, it was like Little Debbie snack cakes. It was fast food. It was macaroni and cheese. That was my jam back in the day. You know, all of those things I never thought I could live without. And today, I live very comfortably without. In fact, all of those things I thought I could never live without, my Reese's Cups was macaroni and cheese and Little Debbie snack cakes and fast food. All of that, and Coca-Cola, all of that, you guys, is repulsive to me now. Repulsive. And if you'd have told me 15 years ago when I was starting on this journey that I would find all of those things that I thought I could never live without repulsive, I would have laughed in your face. But to this lady here today, she's evidence, exhibit A, of what I'm talking about. That addiction is so real. And so then people are, well, I'm not addicted. I could live without that. I'm like, okay, give it up for 30 days. Most people that you tell them to give up X carbohydrate, crappy garbage food for 30 days, by like day 3, they're gonna be bawling their eyes out. And that again is a telltale sign that they're heavily addicted to that sugar, to that usually refined carbohydrate-based food. But even some people in the real food world will say, well, I eat only real whole foods, and so I have like 3 bananas in a day, and I have sweet potatoes, and that's a real whole food, so Jimmy, you can't really be against that. And I'm like, give it up for a period of time. See how you feel. And the same thing will hit if they're sugar addicted. Just because it's, quote, natural sugar in there does not make you immune to the addictive properties that it has. So keep that in mind, you guys, as we talk to people, as you try to share this a little more, help them along in their understanding. And this lady here today, I think she learned a few things in just our like 3 to 5 minute conversation that we had. I didn't want to keep her away because she was working today. But have these conversations with people and make it explainable. And so I charged her. I said, you know, I recently did a Jimmy Rants about this. I said, there's new evidence now. We know that if you eat a little bit later in the day, that it makes it a little bit harder to get your blood sugar under control. And I was like, how's your blood sugar? She said, oh, in the mornings, I'm typically around like 90. I'm like, well, that's really good. So she's getting the benefits in her blood sugar from the reduced carbohydrates that she's consuming. She said, but there's some days that I have a little bit higher blood sugar. It spikes way up. Well, maybe not spike. And I said, well, what does it do, like 110? She's like, yeah. So I explained to her what that means, that when you're keto adapted, that you're not eating glucose, and so you have extra glucose sometimes in the morning for all those glucose dependent functions in the body, and that if you wait till a few hours later in the day, all of that calms down, your blood sugar comes back down again. And I said, but have you thought about maybe ending your meals somewhere around like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just to see if that makes a difference, which means you'll eat at, say, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then a second meal at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then don't eat the rest of the day and into the next morning. She said, is that fasting? Is that the intermittent fasting? I said, yeah. Does that sound hard? No. I didn't realize it was that easy. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of explanation to make this so understandable. And then here's the thing, you guys. She's so worried about not being able to have her Reese's Cup anymore that she's gonna find she will naturally not want the Reese's cup anymore. So that's the beautiful thing about keto, is if you stick with it a little bit, it's gonna reward you in so many ways. Now, if she's hungry right now, which she is, and she starts eating more real food-based fats, especially saturated fats in her diet, because she says she doesn't like bacon. I'm like, well, what about butter? Well, yeah, I love butter. I said, add a little more butter, because she eats lots of vegetables, she said. And I said, well, do you cook the vegetables in the butter? Well, no, I steam them. I'm like, so start cooking the vegetables in the butter, and some of those cravings that you're having now for things like the Reese's peanut butter cups will subside. See how little things, you guys, can impact people. And if you get them to embrace the fat with the carbohydrate restriction, then the magic of keto kicks in. And that's what we're trying to explain to people, that those people that think they don't need keto, that just keep the carbs low and they don't really need to go full bore ketogenic, if they are still heavily addicted to sugar, yeah, they do. If they're still heavily addicted to carbs in general, yeah, they do. And if we get them to give them up for a period of time while simultaneously raising fat in their diet, that's gonna give them the benefits. So hopefully this helped that lady out today. And again, if you joined us late, I had a nice little canvas print created at my local Walgreens of the Jimmy Rants logo, and had this really interesting conversation that I'm like, you know what? I'm so gonna Jimmy Rants this one, because it was just too good not to. All right, so I'm on Instagram Live here, YouTube Live here. So I'm gonna go to YouTube Live first, you guys. So welcome in, let me scroll back through. Nice woodwork. Yeah, this is my man cave building, the right behind me, that plexiglass. That's actually where I record all of my podcasts. So if you've ever listened to any of my podcasts, right there is where it gets recorded. Would be great to get a t-shirt. You want a Jimmy Rants t-shirt? Who wants a Jimmy Rants t-shirt? That sounds like a great idea. The problem with t-shirts though is you got so many varying sizes. If you got them in stock, you know, I'd end up with like super duper small or super duper big, and the middle ones would all sell. A lot of misinformation is so pervasive, said Harps. Yep. Awesome watching from Tulsa. Well, welcome in, Glenn. Thanks for being here. I don't think I could do without Dr. Pepper or pasta, or didn't think, or pizza, but those are the things I now miss the least. That's the thing. When you get keto adapted and you give those things up for a period of time, when you go back to want to try them again, they're gross. I remember the first time I had macaroni and cheese, just to put it in my mouth to see what it would taste like, I was like, why did I ever like this? It is the most flavorless, disgusting thing I've ever put in my mouth. Macaroni and cheese, so plain Jane. Ugh, I don't know why I ever did that. Hello from Seattle. I struggle with sudden yearnings for chips, says Deanna. I'm going to see if I can cope with this by eating squash buried in butter and salt. Still struggling to accept fat. So, Deanna, you're not alone. That is definitely something, that's probably the last big hurdle that most people who come to keto deal with, is this whole notion of embracing fat. So, as far as trying to help squash or help with the cravings for chips, think about getting things, they sell these things called cheese wisps in like Costco. So it gives you the crunch of a chip, and it's just cheese. You can also make your own zucchini chips. So you slice zucchini or squash works as well, really, really thin, and then you bake them in the oven and they crisp up just like a chip as well. And you can put salt and whatever else you want on there. But there are alternatives. Definitely kind of Google around looking for keto chip ideas and you'll see all kinds of things. Glenn said, avoid the triggers and avoid places that will pull your trigger. Indeed. Shirley says, someone I've been planting seeds with about keto says she just can't live without bread. And that's what I'm talking about here today. That is a clear sign of addiction. But bread is silly. There are so many keto bread recipes now. To think that you, quote, can't live without bread anymore is kind of dumb. Yeah, you can. And there's so many recipes. I know in my book, the Ketogenic Cookbook, we have a bread recipe that's got literally 3 ingredients, and it's not almond flour. So go check it out. Takes about 30 days to form a new habit. Actually, it only takes 21 days, Glenn. It helps if you cook your own food. People tell me they can't live without bread. Yeah, Kim, I get it all the time. And sugar. Avocado is high in potassium and cuts sugar cravings. Yep. Not everybody likes the consistency of an avocado, though. I've heard bread a lot too, says Keto Diamond. Bread really isn't something I care about anymore. Yeah, when you give up the carbs, bread becomes kind of an afterthought. So I agree with you. I just found out how addicted to carbs I am. I've been keto for 2 years, says Avalon. Was using sugar-free syrup in my coffee and discovered it has maltodextrin. And suddenly all those cravings came back. Oh yeah, they don't go away. See, people are like, well, you haven't had sugar in a while, Jimmy. I bet you could handle it now. And I'm like, I bet if I had even a little bit of sugar, it would not be a pretty picture. 90% cocoa bar has magnesium, low in sugar. Buy it proactively beforehand. It's bitter. Small pieces curb carb cravings. There's a lot of things that could curb your carb cravings. Kim says, my sister's excuse for not doing keto is she does not want to have to cook. Well, that's just lazy. If you don't want to cook. Back in the good old days, that's what we did, was we cooked. We live in this kind of fast food microwave culture now, and people about lose their minds because, oh, I've got to cook. One thing that keto did for me, you guys, is it rekindled my love for cooking. When I was a kid, I used to do most of the cooking in my house, and Mama appreciated that a lot. Of course, cooking back then was open a can of green beans, warm up, open a can of corn, warm up, do the hamburger helper. But I got this love for the whole process of it all when I was a kid, so that when I got older, and especially when I embraced real whole foods, I now cook things in bone broth, and I like to kind of get creative and make Christine all kinds of things pretty much all the time. 3 or 4 eggs every morning cooked in coconut oil with a little real butter will curb my cravings. Yep. Sugar addiction is gone now, says Harps. A feeling of relief from desire for sugar and starches. You're making a difference every day. Thank you for that, Glenn. It's hard when someone you know who would benefit from keto ignores all the health benefits, says Hallie, and focuses on the misinformation we've been fed through our lives about fat. Yeah, and that happens more often than we want to admit. Intermittent fasting is easier for me if I wait until 3 p.m. to eat. The earlier I eat, the harder it is for me to IF. Well, Keto Diamond, that's a great point. For this lady that I was talking about ending her meals by 3 o'clock, it could be that she could do it if she's not hungry in the morning, and same for you, Keto Diamond. If you're not hungry in the morning, then fast all the way to 3 o'clock, eat your meal, but make sure you eat enough calories in that meal for the entire day. The thing that happens when people just shift to doing one meal is they undereat significantly on the calories, which we talked about that the other day on Jimmy Rants, that you don't want to undereat if you only eat one meal in a day. I don't mind cooking, but not crazy about the cleanup, says Kim. So Christine and I have this nice little deal. I'll do all the cooking, which anybody knows that if you're a good cook, you're messy, and I make a mess when I cook. So our deal is, honey, I will cook you delicious, awesome food, but you gotta clean up the mess. I do clean up some pans and try to clean the stove and all that stuff, but that's our trade-off. All right, I'm gonna pop over, thank you YouTube Live, I'm gonna pop over to my guys on Instagram Live. Thank you guys for being here on Jimmy Rants here today. See what we got here. Any comments? I'm cooking a great big sheet of bacon in the oven right now, says Jennifer. I'll be right over, Jennifer. Tim says, yes, fall off the wagon and having a real hard time getting back. I know how the carbs make me feel. The best way to get right back on it, Tim, when you fall off like that, is to be deliberate about the fat. This lady here at Walgreens that I was talking to, who still wants her Reese's peanut butter cups, that was my suggestion to her is, okay, you're still having those cravings, you're still hungry when you're keto, you need to up your fat. And what upping fat does, it does a lot of things. It quelches a lot of cravings and hunger, obviously. It raises the calories just enough so that your body isn't freaking out. The reason you're hungry, the reason you have cravings is your body is not under control. Your hormones are like, ah! And so you want to calm those hormones down, and that's where the fat comes into play. Kelly says, love hearing your awesome information. Saw you on Netflix, couldn't believe it. Yeah, I was on The Paleo Way was the name of the show. It is on Netflix right now, you guys. I'm in episode 2 with my friend Pete Evans from Australia. We recorded that right at about four or 5 years ago at one of the paleo conferences. Hey, mate, you want to be on television? And of course, when I recorded, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And then it never came out. And then everybody's been emailing me. I saw you on The Paleo Way, episode 2. I'm like, yeah, that was a long time ago. But we did cook a nice little breakfast, and he is a super nice guy. He certainly made it very easy to be on camera. Sam says, the problem with keto, I had to leave the gym early because my pants fell off. Sounds like a problem you don't mind there, Sam. That's awesome. I love it. I can't give up blank means I won't give up blank, says Katrina. Preach, girl, preach. I think you need your own, you need Katrina rants, because that is so true. And like I'm talking about here today is people that think they don't need keto, it means more than ever they do, because their sugar-carb addiction is real. My brother's girlfriend said she can't do keto because the food's too expensive. Next day, I posted pics at a chain restaurant drinking martini. Or she posted it, ugh, drinking martinis. Yeah, those are so cheap, right? Katrina, that's such a funny one to me, and maybe I should do a whole Jimmy Rants all about the notion that it's too expensive to eat keto. I ran an analysis of the amount of money I used to spend on food when I was a carb addict, and then ran numbers on like how I eat now. And how I eat now is far superior nutritionally from what I used to eat. So counting up all the Coca-Colas I drank and the fast food and the Little Debbie snack cakes and having to literally stuff my pie hole every hour on the hour, compared what I paid for that versus having 1, maybe 2 meals a day. And now that I'm keto carnivore, with a long period of intermittent fasting, I'm spending about 1/4 of the amount of money that I used to spend when I was in my carb burning days. 1/4. So if in a day's worth of meals, I used to spend, say, $50. Now I'm only spending $12.50. That's a significant reduction. Significant reduction. And people don't think about that. You don't have to eat as often. People don't think about that when you eat more nutrient-dense foods, you're more satiated and you can go long periods of time between meals. How I used to eat was eat every hour on the hour. Now it's like fast, meal. Fast till the next day, fast, meal. And how freeing is that for your budget, for your time? I have so much more time. I could not imagine doing Jimmy Rants as a sugar-addicted person. In the middle of the rants, which generally go maybe 40 minutes to an hour, in the middle of the rant, I'd be like, hang on, guys, I gotta go eat. I'm starving. I'm hungry. But you guys never see me hangry here on Jimmy Rants because I'm not hungry hardly ever when I do these. In fact, it's better if I'm deep into a fast when I'm doing Jimmy Rants. It's ironic that fat, triglycerides, are formed from fatty acids, not the same as fat. plus glyceride carbs. No carbs equals no triglycerides, just fatty acids greater than ketones. So yeah, you're so right, Alberto. People often think, well, I don't want fat in my blood, so therefore I'm not going to eat fat in my diet. There's actually been some good studies on this, looking at saturated fat in the blood, which is in the form of triglycerides, and they find that when you eat more saturated fat in your diet, those people actually end up having less saturated fat in their blood, whereas if you eat less saturated fat in your diet, more carbs, then you have higher levels of saturated fat, triglycerides, in your blood. Go look up that study, you guys. Dr. Jeff Volek was the one that conducted that right about a decade ago. He conducted that study, and it was eye-opening, unfortunately, because it didn't fit the model of fat fearing and fat mongering, fear mongering over fat, that it didn't make the big splash. But I remember it. My ketone brain does not let me forget these, you guys. So go look that up, Jeff Volek, V-O-L-E-K, if you want to look up that study. If the excuse is cooking, then do some fasting, but at the end it will end up, I need my carbs. Yeah, Alberto, that's the thing. I can't do keto, I don't like cooking. I can't fast, I don't want to starve myself. I want my Reese's peanut butter cups, I want whatever. All of it points to signs, you guys, of severe sugar-carb addiction. I am strong, I am keto. I just cooked a bone-in ribeye for brunch. Yummy. Chromium was the key for me to control my cravings, says Middle of a Forest. Yeah, chromium is a great one. In fact, there's another one that I have with my company, Keto Living. Go to ketoliving.com and look up berberine plus, berberine, B-E-R-B-E-R-I-N-E. And our product's called Berberine Plus, and it has chromium in there. It has another thing called banaba leaf, and then of course the berberine, and all of those things are well known to help fight cravings and blood sugar that's a little out of whack still. All right, let me go, now that I've caught up on Instagram Live, let me go back over to YouTube Live, see if there's any other comments that came in. Thanks for being here, you guys. Let's see, where was I when Shirley says, that's our cooking deal too. My husband makes amazing food, but he's so messy. It means it's really, really amazing food then, Shirley. Let's see here. Berberine and chromium and cinnamon all curb sugar cravings. That's right, that's right. So guys, the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants is you're gonna hear people say, well, I don't eat keto. And this girl here, again, if you missed the beginning, I went to Walgreens. I have a new canvas to go with my others back there for Jimmy Rants. And so when I went to pick it up, she recognized me from being on Drew Manning's Fit to Fat to Fit podcast. And she's like, oh, I didn't know I was meeting a celebrity today. And so we got to talking about keto, and she said, well, I hear him talk about keto and fasting, but I don't think I need to go to that extreme level. And so I'm keeping my carbs low, but I don't think I need to eat all that fat that clog my arteries, blah, blah, blah. So when I inquired further, the real reason why she didn't want to go full on keto is she's still addicted to carbs. She still wants her Reese's peanut butter cups and probably other things. But that was the specific thing that she mentioned. And that is a real sign, you guys. So when people say they don't need keto or they can't do keto, what they're really telling you is they're still very addicted to sugar and carbs, and they, of all people, need keto more than ever before. Keto Kate says, not sure if my question went through. I'm keto, but very tired. So I'm not doing general questions, Kate, but if you will write to me and email jimmy@llvlc.com, or you can write to me directly through Instagram, I'd be happy to address you. On Fridays, we tend to do an open-ended question and answer in the afternoon, Jimmy Rants. So definitely, if I don't get to your question, come back on Friday afternoon and we will answer your question. But thank you for that. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, as always. We start off on JimmyRants.com, and we usually start off on one of several formats. I'm Instagram Live here, I'm YouTube Live there. I also have been adding in Facebook Live. We try to mix it around you guys to give everybody that follows me a chance to watch these shows live. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay on YouTube. Definitely go follow me all across the internet. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. And so type in a keyword on YouTube, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show on YouTube, so you can see all the past episodes. Finally, we do have a podcast, which has the best of the best moments of this year's show in podcast form. It's on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com.